History 1. This happened to me during my junior year of high school. I'm a girl, and I tend to be a bit of a people pleaser. I usually avoid calling people out, rejecting anyone, or acting like someone is being strange. I'm also fairly open-minded and go with the flow. School started in early September, and in my chemistry class I noticed a boy who kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye. I gave him one of those half smiles to acknowledge him, and continued with my assignment. I didn't think much of it for a few weeks, even though he kept staring. He was tall and very thin, with dark hair and eyes so dark brown they looked almost black. He had a pretty average face except for those intense eyes. One day he finally said hi. I greeted him back and he introduced himself as Mark. I told him my name, but he said he already knew it. That wasn't surprising since I write in large letters, and he could have easily seen it on my papers given how much he stared. It was a little weird that he showed no expression when he flatly said he knew my name. I just laughed it off, said, "Oh, okay," and started packing my things as the bell was about to ring. I only had a few friends, and we always sat at the same table during lunch. We were a quiet bunch, mostly reading while we ate. That means I usually don't look around the lunchroom because I'm focused on my book. But that day, my friend had finished her novel, so I decided to put mine away and chat. That's when I noticed Mark staring at us from the courtyard. He didn't seem embarrassed that I caught him. I pointed him out to my friend and told her about him from class. She thought it was super creepy, but I said he's probably harmless and just socially awkward. Later that day, I got to chemistry class a bit early, and it was just me, Mark, and another girl for about 10 minutes. I gave Mark another half smile and started reading my book. He was sitting there with his hands folded over his mouth, staring again. This time it felt awkward because we were basically alone. I raised my eyebrows at him as if to ask, "What's up?" He looked me up and down slowly, and I asked if he was okay. He said yes, that he was just lost in thought. I shrugged it off. The next day at lunch, there was a small piece of paper on our table with my full name on it. I opened it, and it had something really disturbing written on it. Something like, "I wonder what your would look like with a PVC pipe shoved up it." What the heck? I looked around but didn't see Mark, though I immediately knew it was him. I was terrified to go to class later, but he wasn't there. That made me feel a lot better. The note was disgusting and embarrassing, so I didn't want to show it to any school staff. I just threw it away. At the end of the day, I went to the bus area like usual, and there was Mark leaning against a pillar with his backpack. I felt chills when I noticed a white PVC pipe sticking out of his backpack. I tried not to react, even though I was sure he watched me read the note. The next morning, I made an appointment with the school counselor and asked to change classes. She was hesitant because it was already well into the school year, but I think my good grades and behavior history helped. I spent the rest of the year avoiding him. He continued to stare at me at lunch, and once he even took photos of me at the bus area without my consent, which was against school policy. I got some pepper spray to carry with me for safety. When senior year started, Mark was no longer at our school. I have no idea what happened to him, and honestly, I don't really want to find out. History 2. This happened back when I was in high school, just a few weeks into the year. I'd managed to make a couple of friends and was eager to meet more people, so I spent a lot of time trying to socialize. I was still relatively new to the school, and one day I got lost in the hallways. That's when I met a guy named Alan, who would eventually turn into my stalker. At first, he seemed friendly, showing me around and helping me find my classroom. We chatted a bit, and I thought it might be nice to have him as a friend. A week passed, and I had made a few more friends. I wanted to hang out with them as much as possible. I felt a little guilty about Alan since he seemed to be a bit of a loner, so I invited him to join us. At first he was quiet, but after a while he opened up and wouldn't stop talking, mostly to me. He started asking for advice on various things, and I was happy to help. That is, until he started asking me to pat his head like a dog and put a leash on him. It was strange, to say the least. I thought he was joking and played along, which was a mistake. Alan began calling me master or mistress, and I told him I wasn't comfortable with that, but it seemed like it was too late. He started skipping his classes to come into mine, only to get kicked out by the teacher. He followed me everywhere, even trying to follow me into the restroom. I repeatedly asked him to stop, but he refused. I tried to get the school involved, but they claimed they had no proof of stalking, even though several teachers had kicked him out of my classes. It didn't make sense, but nothing was done about it. Things escalated when I asked my friend Tom to help me with a homework assignment. Alan overheard this and got furious, even though we were just friends. He started harassing and fighting with any guy I talked to. Some might think this was flattering, but I found it irritating and childish. I tried to reassure him, but he said things like, "They don't deserve you. They're worthless compared to my master." I finally snapped and yelled at him, telling him off for his behavior. I felt bad for being harsh, but I was at my wit's end. If he wanted to act like a dog, I was going to treat him like one. I thought that would be the end of it, but then I found a letter in my locker. It was from Alan, expressing his hatred for other guys and his self-loathing. The letter was disturbing, especially when I looked up and saw him staring at me from down the hall. He came over, showed me pictures on his phone of a cartoon character that looked like me with brown eyes and curly hair, and tried to hand me a leash. He wanted me to walk him around like a pet. That was the last straw, and I ran to the office with the letter. The principal finally had the proof needed to take action. The police got involved, and a restraining order was issued. Alan was expelled and wasn't allowed within 50 feet of me. About a month later, I was in my room doing homework when I heard a scratching sound at the window. I looked over and froze in terror. Alan was outside, staring at me with a collar around his neck and a leash dangling from it. He grinned, licked the window, and then ran off. I freaked out and woke my parents, who called the police. They arrested him for violating the restraining order. Fortunately, I moved away from that town soon after and never heard from him again. The whole experience was terrifying, not romantic or fun in any way. It was the worst thing I've ever gone through, and I still have nightmares about it. I hope Alan got the help he needed, but I'll never forget how scary that time in my life was.